excited about this episode of Tom Talks, where we're going to chat about this original Ford GT40 that we have recently purchased. Now, this is the first Ford GT40 that I've actually ever bought for stock. It's a car that I've known of for several years. It's special in so many ways, but the one attribute that I love about it is its colour. This colour, Warwick Green, is the only GT40 ever painted in this colour, and I'm not sure what you think, but I absolutely love it. Now, this is a Mk1 road car. Now, in GT40s, they've done the Mk1 series, Mk2, Mk3. The majority of the cars were race cars with race spec, but this was a road car from new. They only built 30 road examples, which makes them extremely rare, and especially when you consider how many of them are left in their pure form today, or how many of them have not been bastardized over the years. This makes this car even more special. Now, the difference between a road spec car compared to a race spec car, they were very similar in many ways, but Ford just made them a little bit more user-friendly for the road and added some additional features, such as they put the Ford badge on the front, they put the Ford badge on the side sill, they put outside door locks, they changed the opening from the rear tail from being an exterior, a cutout in the roof, to being inside the doors on the rear firewall. They fully carpeted the interior. They moved the battery from the passenger's footwell and put it into the engine bay and gave it a smaller left-hand petrol tank. So little features such as that. They also added a speedometer, always something that's handy for a road car. And you know, the specs of the cars mechanically were so similar that a lot of people through the years had took their road car and converted it to race spec. And for me, you know, I don't want to go racing in a GT40. If I was going to buy a GT40 to keep, I would buy a road car. And there's very few cars that still exist today, the road specification cars, that still exist in their original form. Now, the history behind this particular car is that it originally started life as one of the Ford promotional cars, which I believe out the 30 road cars that were built, 19 of them were used for promotional purposes. It was assigned to Shelby American. It left the Ford Advanced Vehicles in Slough in December 1966, and it was part of the very famous shot. It was actually the centre car of the very famous shot of the 8 road cars that were ready to be shipped to America at Ford Advanced Vehicles. It then left, went to America at the end of 66, and then in 1967, Carroll Shelby himself actually sold this car to the very first owner, a Mr. Nick Nero, who would, a couple of years later, sell it on and then later buy the car back, a sign of how much he thought of the car. It later got sold to noted Ford GT40 expert restorer Robert Ashe in America. And Robert, there's some great correspondence within the history file where Robert confirms how original the car was, and that he used this car as his reference car for every GT40 that he subsequently restored. It had all of the original hoses, fuel lines, and was then sold to a very well-respected and highly regarded collector, a gentleman who was part of Microsoft and had the likes of a Ferrari 250 GTO. So it resided with him for the best part of 25 years. And then in 2015, it got sold to another well-respected North American collector, and he decided to return the car to its very cool and totally unique original colour. The car has been completely refurbished. He has driven the car very little, and I've been on his case for some time. It took me a while, but my persistence eventually paid off. And last week was the first time that this car ever set foot back on UK soil since it left Ford Advanced Vehicles in December 1966. That's something I feel like I'm super proud of. And, you know, I hope that we managed to sell the car to a really good next custodian. But if we don't, then we're going to have a lot of fun using it for a while. And I think now's a good time to jump in it and see how well I fit. Right, let's see what we have inside. We've got our battery cutoff switch. We've obviously got our gears. Quite interestingly, actually, you can't select reverse without going to first. You initially have to go to first, and then you can put it into reverse. You've got your starter button in the center. This big stalk, not the prettiest thing I've ever seen, is for your indicators and also controls your main beam. So left is up, right is down. Ignition, fuel pumps. I love the simplicity. Like just a simple switch up and down. Right hand fuel tank, and you have left hand fuel tank. Now, fuel tanks on a road car is slightly differs from the race cars. You've got your switch behind the passenger seat that can control whether you go from the left hand tank or the right hand tank. The right hand tank is larger, the left hand tank is a little bit smaller to accommodate the battery that's been moved from the passenger's footwell into the engine bay. So, you know, we're going to use the car on the right hand tank, and then when we conk out of petrol, which I often do, I'll then switch over to the left hand tank. We've got our oil pressure, we've got water temperature, we've got oil temperature, we've got our rev counter straight in front of us. Great vision actually for the driver, and the speedometer on the left hand side, fog lamps, headlamps, the dash panel switches, wiper switches. We have handbrake on the center. Actually, the handbrake on the race cars is very different. It's angled much more over the passenger's legs. Would have been a lot of fun to have a pretty young lady next to you when you needed to grab the handbrake. I'm sure all the drivers was grabbing the handbrake back in the day. And then, as I say, the interior on a road car differs from, it's a bit more luxurious. You know, it has the full carpeting, the leather panels. Your chassis tags on GT40s, quite interestingly, most of the panels have got tags on them, which is good, and to be able to check a car today, the authenticity of the car today, and also to know if it's got the correct tags. You know, I've inspected a couple of GT40s over the last 5 years, both cars that I agreed to buy, and both cars that I walked away from because the originality was no longer there. This car I love to see. It's got its original chassis tags on the doors, on the sills, underneath the dash. And when you look inside the engine bay, absolutely everything on this car is totally correct. From the exhaust heat shield, it's got its 4 Weber carburetors, it's got all the correct Simplifix hoses, it's got the correct oil cooler. Ronnie Spain, who is the Ford GT40 expert, he's just the GT40 expert, messaged me today and said that this is the most correct road car in existence, which made me feel really good and gave me a little bit of a buzz. So it's been really exciting to buy it, and I think we now need to go for a drive. So this is the first time I've ever driven an original GT40. Let's give it a go. Ignition on. Ooh, fuel pumps on. Let's check it in neutral. The starter button's in the middle. A couple of pumps of the throttle. Just to sit here. Okay, Tom, prepare yourself for this. Let's get familiar with the controls. We don't need to worry about fog lamps, headlamps. Okay, we're comfortable. Let's rock and roll. A little bit of a bumpy road. That's how very easily I can sacrifice.